Paratopia, please welcome back to the program the one, the only, the author of Ghosts of Gettysburg. That's right, it's Mr. Mark Nesbitt. Mark, thank you very much for coming back to the show.
My pleasure, guys.
And I guess let's jump right into it. You've got, an amazing EVP from this past weekend, or just an average EVP from this past weekend?
Well, we got several EVPs from this past weekend. Actually, I haven't reviewed all of them, but we did one of our Ghost Quest weekends, which we do at least once, sometimes twice a year. They're kind of like a adjunct to our Mysterious Journeys weekends that we do, where we bring, we invite people in, they stay overnight at a haunted inn in Gettysburg, or sometimes the Cashtown Inn. Then we escort them to several haunted sites, and basically to show them how to do the experiments and how to gather EVP and take photos and typical investigative type stuff. And so we did one this past weekend in conjunction with the James Geddes Hotel in Gettysburg. That's the one on Chambersburg Street. Excellent hotel. And one of the places we did an investigation was the James Geddes, because I have several stories about it in my books. And I got some EVP, and I've only had a chance to go over the James Geddes part, but one of the participants was saying, this is interesting that we keep asking the entities, who they are, what regiment they're from, what's the date, who's president, that type of thing. He said, why don't you ask them what it's like where they are? And so I did, and it's kind of interesting because I asked the one fella, what is it like there? And I got a very, very clear where. In other words, he was asking me, what do you mean? I'm here, aren't I? It seemed like that was the answer, because he's like, what do you mean? What is it like? I'm here. I'm right with you. Yeah. So he was confused. He didn't know where I was talking about, heaven, nirvana, whatever. And then I got a couple of others later on, which were not quite Class A, but I asked a question of a soldier, and I got an answer that was, it sounded like somebody said, Frank, who's that? In other words, he was talking to somebody else and asking, who's asking that question? Mm-hmm. Huh. And then finally, maybe the best EVP I got, Lane Crosby was there. She's our one of our mediums that we use, and she saw something over my left shoulder. I mean, they, as you know, they see things that we don't, or at least I don't. Mm-hmm. And she said, ask him what that is over your left shoulder. And I got a Class A EVP of someone saying nasty. Huh. So, and all that stuff is available, or should be available very, very shortly for people to listen to on ghostchannel.tv. That's the website that we use to put out all of our information on our different weekends that we have. But and I would appreciate Jeff and Jeremy, you guys, if you listen to those, let me know what you think.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Has anyone ever asked, what are you doing right now, or is that too complicated of a question?
No, I don't think that's too complicated a question. I mean, we can always ask it. Like I said, I was a little surprised because the first time that the famous Sarah Estep, the woman who actually got EVP, gave it a name here in America, was she was doing her famous experiments, trying to find out what if EVP really worked. And one of the thing that got her hooked is she kept asking the same question and got absolutely nothing. And finally, she said, "What is it like where you are?" And when she played it back, she got one word, and it was beauty. So, I'm willing to ask any question. I have a tendency to kind of get locked into the what regiment are you from? Give me a number, give me a state, and that type of thing. But I really ought to be expanding it a little bit more.
Well, the reason I ask is because if you say, where are you right now? And they say here, as if, where else would I be? Well, what is it that they think they're talking to? What are you doing right now? Are you doing a seance and we're coming through your seance, or are you talking to yourself, or what?
Good point. Or are they literally right here next to us in another dimension?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they can see. They're coexisting. In other words, just in an unseen, on an unseen plane.
Well, I mean, Mark, that's not really like an unusual answer to get, is it? I mean, haven't we heard EVPs before that say, "Well, I'm right here. Where are you?" Or, I mean, I find it interesting that the one said, "Who's asking that question?" Or Frank, who asked that?
Frank,
or who was that? I mean, because it just puts you in mind that go back in time to the date of whenever you happen to have plugged into the information net there. It just puts you in mind of somebody going, "What the hell was that? Did you hear that?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's just ultimately confusing to the whole ghost phenomena, as being dead people. I mean, that's what we think of.
Often we don't get the answer we expect either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You ask for a date, and you'll get something like, "Who's that?" Who's talking to me? So it's still so many questions involved in this, and so many things that are unanswered. But you just keep doing it and keep expanding and see what you get. So,
well, I know that, and here's a question for you about EVP. I mean, the thing that has confused Jeremy and I both about it is that we did I believe, Jeremy, am I right? It was Colin Andrews' episode that we got a man talking.
No, it was the Crop Circle Roundtable.
That's right. And we did a roundtable show with some Crop Circle guys from over in England. And I mean, clearly, Jeremy's going through he's editing the show together, and he says, "We got an EVP," and it's pretty. You can't make it out. I mean, you cannot make out what's being said, but clearly it's someone with a British accent.
It's loud.
It's loud.
It's crystal clear. It's just they're going blah 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 blah.
Yeah. It seems like nonsensical. I mean, do you often run into things like that where you get maybe like a Southern drawl type murmuring or babbling that just doesn't seem to make any sense at all?
Yeah, I get a couple types. One is kind of like, how you're a white noise of a party. You know how when you're at a party and you're talking to somebody one-on-one and you hear the voices in the background of the other people. You can't understand what they're saying. Or if you're at a restaurant, you can hear the voices of the people. You can't understand what they're saying, but you know that they're words, and because of the way the voices are inflecting and things like that. Right. So I get that a lot, and a lot of times I will get single voices. In fact, I was just going through some EVP today where, and this is like the fifth or sixth time I've gone through this, and you can hear the rhythm of a sentence, but you can't make out the words, and no matter how many times I go over it. It's very frustrating. But the answer to your question is, yeah, you do. You get a lot of that stuff that it's just right there, and you just can't make it out. And no matter how much you clean it up, you still only get the rhythms. You can tell there's a 2-syllable word, a 1-syllable word, and a 3-syllable word, but I can't make out what it is.
Right.
So it happens frequently, you know what I mean?
Is there anyone doing any research where they're just concentrating on one area for their entire research, like one house or one field, and asking just a litany of questions over the course of months or years that you know of?
Well, we kind of done that with, our what we affectionately call the ghost house. Jeff is familiar with it. He spent a night there. And we have been working in there since about 1997, and have gotten lots of, every couple of weeks we'll be in there trying to get EVP. So we know from that and from other sources that we have at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 permanent ghosts in there. They're just there all the time, and every time we go in there, they're there. We have Georgia soldiers. I don't know how many, because that seems to change. But those are the troops that were in that area. Some Louisiana soldiers, and then some that come and go that aren't there all the time. A priest that shows up periodically. Last time there was a fellow by the name of Philip that was there that I never knew about.
And do you have a running dialogue with them, or do they recognize you every time you talk to them?
Some of them do. Some of them do. Mrs. Kitzmiller, who was a lady who owned the house longer than anybody, from 1866 to the 1920s, she apparently she sees me. I don't know that, but according to the media, oh yeah, Mrs. Kitzmiller's here, and we have it's almost invariable. I can usually get a little conversation going with her about the weather. Am I taking good care of your house? Even though I'm paying the mortgage, it's still our house. And we had an interesting conversation about some cookies. She thinks we should serve cookies and tea to the people that come in. And so Carol went out and we tried to get some real cookies, but failed. And so we got some little wafer type things, about an inch in diameter. And when we do the EVP with a group, I try and keep my mouth shut when I play it back. I want other people to hear it first. And there was a woman sitting right next to me, and so I asked Mrs. Kitzmiller, I said, Mrs. Kitzmiller, do you like the cookies we got? And, of course, there's total silence. Then when I played it back, I waited for this other woman to say what she heard, and when I asked that question, do you like the cookies, this woman jumped up, and she repeated what she heard. She said, I hate them. So she hated the little cookies that we got. So we don't talk about the cookies anymore with Mrs. Kitzmiller. Since that was a sore subject. So, yeah, the only problem is that it's not a real-time two-way communication. You know what I mean? I have to ask a question, let them answer it, and then listen to it, and then ask another question that may be pertinent to that one. But we're working on the two-way communication. Scott Crownover has got a system set up now where he can not only put two people on earphones to listen while we're doing EVP, he's also recording it, and you can also see a visual, a graphic on his computer. And a couple of Mysterious Journeys weekends ago, we were actually in the back room there. You're familiar with that, on the second floor.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And he recorded, the two people listening heard, and half the room heard, two very deep breaths, like somebody breathing in and out. And the weird part is I did not record it. I was trying to get EVP. My recorder did not record it. His did. I heard it. Half the people there heard it. The other half didn't. And whenever, you get people in a room like that, half the people hear it, half the people don't. That means to me it's probably paranormal. It's because we get that a lot on our tours. People will smell a pipe tobacco. One person will smell it, the person next to him won't, and that just indicates one person is more sensitive than the other. I mean, everyone would smell it within a second. If a person's standing next to you and they smell tobacco, you're going to be smelling it very soon.
Yeah.
Right.
So to me, that indicates a paranormal event.
We had Phil Imbrogno, who's a paranormal researcher, on a few weeks ago, and he told a story of a man crossing a frozen river in the Hudson Valley and meeting, basically in front of him went sort of blurry, just the vision in front of him went blurry of the environment, and out stepped a guy in sort of 1800s garb and asked him, where do you live? And he said, right over there. And he said, are you coming from a costume party? And the guy said, I thought you were coming from a costume party. And he said, well, aren't you cold? Because the guy was dressed in short sleeves. And he said, why would I be cold? It's July. And then the guy just, not the guy, but the ghost or the whatever, sort of ran, like he thought that maybe, maybe he was looking at a demon or something, and he just ran away and then disappeared. Do you have any stories like that where it sounds like maybe there's some sort of almost a time slip more than a ghost encounter?
Yeah, and I call them warps, and others call them warps as well. It's almost as if there's like a tear in time. Say time is a veil, and all of a sudden there's like a opening of tear in this veil, and you periodically can see through it. And I'm going to say that a lot of the ghost stories that I have in my books are probably time slips. Now, there may or may not be any communication between the living and the dead, although, for example, one of the very first stories I collected at Gettysburg was about a young woman who is when I was working for the Park Service, and she came into the information desk, and it was early in the morning, and she'd been out to Devil's Den, and she walked up and she said, are there any ghosts here at Gettysburg? And of course, the official Park Service line is there are no ghosts here at Gettysburg. So, the people at the desk said, well, there are no ghosts here at Gettysburg. And then we looked around to see if there were any bosses there, and we said, why? What happened? We're all excited. We want to know what happened. And she said, well, she was out at Devil's Den. It was early in the morning. Nobody else was there. She was got kind of turned around, figured it's a pretty morning, I'm going to take a picture. So she got out of her car, stood up on top of one of the rocks, and was looking, and had her eye up to the camera, and all of a sudden she felt a presence. And she turned around, and a man was standing there. And he said, what you're looking for is over there. And he pointed past her, and so she turned around, and she was thinking, wait a minute, how's he know what I'm looking for? She turned back, and he was gone. We asked her, what did he look like? How was he dressed? And she described him with a floppy hat, shoulder-length hair, barefoot, ragged clothes. In other words, basically, she described a Texas soldier who was at Gettysburg. They were from the Texas was the wilderness, and it took forever to get clothes from the armories or even your home if you live in Texas. And so, and of course, the troops that were most associated with taking Devil's Den was the 1st Texas. So she kind of got for a brief moment, time seemed to tear open. He actually acknowledged her, spoke to her, pointed. She turned around, and that veil slammed closed again because there's no way he could have gotten anywhere. She was basically on top of this big rock. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those things that may apply. And of course, I have dozens and dozens of other stories that may be a time slip as well. Although the reaction of the ghost being scared by the living person running away is interesting. Mm-hmm. That's probably the first time I've heard that.
Well, I got here's a kind of a off the wall question, Mark, for you. I think I'd mentioned when I was over at your place the other day that the whole Imbrogno layout of that story with the lake, the notion that we may be talking through time or seeing through time, then begs the question for me: is there anything that you've ever come across in any of the Civil War, maybe soldiers' diaries that have been published, or maybe as you work for the Park Service there, have you ever come across any documentation from anyone who was there during the battle who said, I saw something really strange today, or I saw something that disappeared, I saw a person disappear, I can't explain this? Is there any kind of trace back to what we may be seeing today as kind of inserting itself into the past as we go along?
Yeah, I have ghost stories from Civil War era people. Now, I don't have any where they have actually mentioned something that they saw that could have been futuristic.
Right. Well, how would they know? I mean, really? Yeah.
We don't have very many of those. I mean, I don't know of too many people who have all of a sudden they're walking down the street and they get this vision of something completely modern, ultra modern that's you know what I mean, 150, 200 years ahead.
Not much you count flying saucers.
yeah, well, maybe that could be. But I do have some stories of Civil War era people seeing ghosts and experiencing ghosts. So those I have. Fredericksburg in particular.
What do they say? I mean, do they say it looked like someone from the past, or is it real nondescript in that way?
Well, the one description that I have is from St. George's Episcopal Church, and this is in 1858, and the woman's name was Mary McCarty, and she and her beau were going to choir practice, and it was nighttime, and they went in, and she went into the choir loft and with a single candle, and nobody else was there yet. And he said, I'll go and find some more candles because we're going to need them, and find the choir director. So he left, and she's sitting there by herself, and she looked down into the down at to the aisle, and in front of the altar was a woman. She said, dressed in white. You know, your classic woman in white,
right.
Dressed in white, kneeling and praying. The woman stood up, turned around, and started walking down the aisle, glanced up, saw Mary McCarty, and vanished.
Huh.
So here's a woman in 1858 that saw a ghost in a church that had been there from the late 1700s.
Right. Huh.
So, and I have two or three other stories of and one of the first in Gettysburg that I'd heard were a couple of hunters out at Devil's Den, and they apparently got lost and turned around, and you know it's easy to do, especially if there aren't any roads out there. And they saw an individual who was motioning to them, follow me. So they started following him, and he led them to an area where they were familiar with, and then he disappeared.
Huh.
So, you know, and they attributed it to a ghost. That we have to go with their opinion on that.
Right,
but
right.
They couldn't find the guy after that. He just sort of, vanished or disappeared. Well, not before their eyes, but just disappeared.
Mark, let me ask you a question about people who have hauntings and things like that. In ufology, people who are experiencers or abductees or even just UFO sightings sometimes, people who have UFO sightings, can think that they are cursed or blessed or have a special message to impart upon humanity. It becomes this weird, either good or evil spiritual component that sort of comes out of people as a result of this stuff sometimes. Is there any of that with ghost witnesses? I mean, we don't... Do you hear that about, especially people who have a haunted house? Do they feel blessed, cursed? Do they feel like God's at work, the devil? I mean, anything like that?
I don't know. I think it kind of depends on the individual, but most people, I mean, it is, without a doubt, a life-changing experience. How people handle it, kind of depends on the individual. I think some people think, they get scared and they think that it's a demon or that, they're being, that they are cursed, but that's not necessarily so. I mean, it could be something as simple as watching, your car keys, move from one side of the table to the other, and all of a sudden, how are you going to take that? I mean, I'd look at it and say, hey, thanks. Do that again. But some people might think it's the devil doing it. I guess it depends on your upbringing. But it's definitely a life-changing experience for a lot of people. We see it almost every time we do one of these weekends because, as you know, we're into this, and we're kind of jaded a little bit by, getting EVP and things that happen and seeing things and that type of stuff. But these people, they get a dose of it maybe once a year, if that. And they are really, I've seen people change because of their experiences with us. Skeptics, a lot of times, we'll go around the room and ask people, why are you here? And the husband, it's usually the man, he'll say, well, I'm here because of her. She made me come. And we had a young lady this past weekend who said, the only reason I'm here is because of my boyfriend. I don't believe any of this stuff. I said, okay, that's fine. That's okay. Well, after she heard the EVP that I talked about, the where and, some of the other things, she just was like, I can't believe it. I'm hooked now. I want to know more about this. Mm-hmm. So it I know it affects everybody if it happens to you.
Right.
Because it is,
Well, I'm just wondering if there's something special about, it's just weird. UFO believers or what have you who believe in aliens, that aliens are doing this, somehow that gets translated into part of a spiritual journey for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And just on the face of it, it seems like, why would that happen? And I'm just wondering if that happens with other paranormal phenomena too. But what would you say about someone like our friend Jeff Ritzman here, whose case you're somewhat familiar with, and a lot of the listeners are as well? From the ghost investigator perspective, what would you say is happening to him? Since he's got all of this, from alleged alien type things to poltergeist type things. What would the ghost? I don't want to say ghost hunter. I guess ghost investigator answer to that be? Because we know what the UFO investigator answer would be.
The password is he's crazy.
You know, I don't know if wondering about someone who does this type of thing, you know, is really a fair question because, like I said, I've seen Jeff do his investigations and then analyze stuff, and it is, you know, he is very, very thorough and very, very objective on most of this stuff, and he explained to me this past we were together this past week, and he was explaining this one photograph that I'd taken at the Cashtown Inn with a game cam, and he was explaining how the first photograph, two photographs were taken. The first one was of Jack, the owner, locking up the bar, and it was at 33 or 35 minutes after midnight. And he goes through, locks it, closes, turns off all the lights, and locks it up. Well, about 11 minutes later, there is the game cam goes off, and there's another figure. And Jeff saw things that I didn't see. It's the fact that it was actually seemed to be passing through the slats of the chair. And two or three other things that he mentioned. He said it seemed to have a light. It's not a reflected light. In other words, there was no light being reflected off of it. This is mainly because there wasn't any light to reflect off of it. It was a infrared game cam, but it had a glow that came from within. It was self-generating. So now, you know, when Jeff started analyzing all that stuff, I'm thinking this is stuff I didn't see or didn't think about. So he's pretty objective about all this stuff. You know, it's a kind of a different animal. You know, when we do this type of thing. Now, I've never really dealt with too many UFO people, so I don't know how they look at a lot of this stuff, and whether you are.
Boy, aren't you lucky?
Well, no. The reason I ask is I just wonder if Jeff had interpreted, like originally Jeff had interpreted. Sorry to speak about you in the third person, Jeff.
That's okay.
Originally, Jeff had interpreted his experiences as demonic. And then through time he thought alien, and then now he's sort of with, I don't know, nothing seems to cover it. If he'd stuck with demonic, or if he had come to you and said, this is happening to me, what do you think it is? Would you have thought it was alien? Would you have thought it was demonic? Would you have thought it was something else? I mean, has anyone come to you with things that sound like, maybe they're not ghosts, maybe they're some other seemingly related thing that we can't quite put our finger on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anything associated with Gettysburg right now escapes me, but I do know that, what the heck was that? Somebody, as a matter of fact, somebody did tell me, and this is really weird, this is maybe cryptozoological or something, but they did say that they were out at Marsh Creek one night, he and a group of other people, and something came out of Marsh Creek that was humanoid, that was, bipedal, and moved towards them, and of course, they just, freaked out, got in the cars, took off. What was it? I don't know. That's the first and only time I've ever heard of anything, like the swamp creature or something coming out of that. And so how they interpret it, I don't think they interpret it as a ghost.
So often with experiencers and abductees, the more you get to talk to them, the more you see that it's not just this supposed UFO or alien abduction, but that they've also got poltergeist phenomena in their lives or psychic type of phenomena in their lives. It's this whole host of things. Have you read into that? Has it been the same way with people who say, I've got a ghost, that the more you investigate, the more you find out they also have, say, aliens or UFOs in their lives?
Not really. Not in my, the letters I get time and time again will start off, I have never had a paranormal experience in my life. And these are from, medical doctors, college professors, police. And then they'll proceed to write about what happened to them at Gettysburg. And so they usually would say something to the effect that, one time I did see a UFO or this or that, but you would think,
Right,
but they usually start off by saying, and this is a lot. These are enough letters starting off that way that I've never had a paranormal experience in my life to be notable as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
I'm also curious about a couple of locations, Mark, and I wonder if you could tell me, or tell our audience rather, a little bit more about them. Triangle Field. After we got done at your house and we did that show there, mm-hmm. much like some of your guests at the house, I got hooked until it got too cold. And so I'm probably going back up again this weekend. Mm-hmm. But I got hooked and I started to go to Devil's Den, which is usually pretty crowded. Yeah. I haven't had much luck going there and filming or taking stills or even doing EVPs because there's always so many people there. Right. But Triangle Field is one of those places where you just don't get a ton of people. It's usually a revolving door, and most of them don't want to travel too far down into it because, as our dear friend Lisa, who went with us, found, ticks are abounding in that field. But I went down there. There is a path about, what would you say, probably halfway down. There's a path that goes completely across the field. Right. And then I think bends to the left and goes up towards Devil's Den. So we're talking about the same general area. Mm-hmm. And I got an EVP there that is the best that I've ever gotten personally, which was, Captain, they're coming from the right. Now that was standing down by the old tree. Yeah, facing towards where Jason had told me, because he's a lot bigger into the Civil War info than I am. He's a lot better educated in it than I am. He said that was where the I believe the Texas guys were in those woods. Uh-huh. So does something like that make sense, that someone in that spot would be saying they're coming from the right?
If they were Union, yes. If they're 124th New York or whatever, or maybe Smith's Battery up at the wall there. Now, my book, 35 Days to Gettysburg, has to do with a soldier from the 15th Georgia. Mm. And it was either the Georgians or one of the Texas units. You know, there's as you're looking down the slope, mm-hmm. there is a stone wall to the right that forms one side of the triangular field. Their unit actually straddled that fence. In other words, you know, one company was on one side, one company was on another, and the rest of the companies were spread out on either side. So they actually came up that area, and that would have been, if you're looking at it from the point of view of, say, Smith's Battery or some of the supporting troops, they would have been coming from the right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So that somewhat makes sense for that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when we stayed at your place, I think I told everybody on the show that I really couldn't qualify this very well, but that when we all kind of flaked out and fell asleep, what about, Jeremy, what was it, 4:45 or 4:30, somewhere in there?
Yeah, around 5, yeah.
Jeremy and I were in the back room at your house, upstairs, flaked out in chairs, and I distinctly heard someone walking into the kitchen. I lifted my hat brim up above my eyes, just barely, and I saw a pair of legs, ladies. I saw what looked like the bottom of what they call a muumuu that the elderly ladies wear, and like hard sole worn dark shoes. And for some reason, my brain said Lisa, my wife, was coming in to see if I was asleep or something, because all she did was come into the room to the edge of the door frame and then turn around and walk away. She stood there for a matter of seconds. I paid this no attention whatsoever. And when I woke up the next morning, it hit me saying, Lisa wasn't wearing a muumuu. She's not an old woman. She doesn't have old lady legs. And nobody was wearing shoes in your house because we were afraid of tracking mud. I didn't really say anything to you about that, nor your wife, Carol. And yet she mentioned to me something on the phone about that Lane or a couple of people that you work with that are mediums had said there was an older Italian woman in your house.
Right.
Can you explain that? Because it kind of freaks me out.
That was one of the. Remember, I said we have some ghosts in our house, 4 or 5 of them that are permanent, and then some that come and go. Mm-hmm. And apparently, one of our mediums, I think it was Patty or Lane, I don't know, was there, and she said, Mrs. Kitzman was really upset. And I'm like, why? What did I do? Well, you didn't do anything, but she says, there's this woman in my kitchen, and I want her out of here. And I'm not really sure. I think one of the mediums said that she saw her, and she was kind of like a lost soul. She was an Italian woman, and, you know, that area of Pennsylvania is mostly German. Pennsylvania Deutsch, you know, it's mostly German. Right. And she was dressed not in the era of the 1860s, but in the era of maybe later, maybe some of the great immigration later in the 1880s or 1890s. Mm-hmm. So what you described, basically, I think, was that woman, the little Italian lady that Mrs. Kitzmiller was upset about, and then later on, they saw her again out on the street, on the corner, kind of looking lost, you know, kind of looking at the house, and so. But that may have been what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I can't qualify because, like I said, I woke up out of practically a dead sleep, but I heard the sound, and we actually got the sound on the Mac, which we had running with a Blue Snowball microphone sitting right there on the countertop. So, I mean, we've definitely got the sound of hard soles on your linoleum floor in the kitchen, which is impossible because we were all wearing socks and nothing else. So that kind of, I don't know. I can't say that it verifies anything for me, but it's certainly one of those things that's just like everything else in the paranormal, which is you're not going to put your finger on it. You're not going to nail it down. But it's just one of those things that just kind of made me cock my head like a dog.
Well, also accumulated evidence too.
Yeah, Jeff. Yeah.
And I know for a fact because I've heard it. I've heard footsteps. You know, when we're in that back room and I'm trying to do EVP, my back is to that door. Mm-hmm. And I've heard footsteps. I've turned around. I thought it was Carol coming in to, you know, tell me we need to switch groups here. And there were a couple of times when I actually turned around, nobody was there. I had a group in there once, and I was trying to get EVP, and of course I'm really being really quiet. So I turned the machine off, and I said, did anyone else hear footsteps out there in the kitchen? And half the group was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody's out there? I'm like, no one's out there. The guy standing next to me, or sitting next to me, says, actually, he says, I saw somebody lean over your shoulder and look at your recorder as if wondering what you were doing. Huh. Now, I did not feel anything. I'm thinking, did I feel cold? You know, that's the...
Right.
And I don't remember. I don't think I did. But he actually saw a shadow, you know, see what he thought was looking over my shoulder to see what I was doing. But the footsteps are absolutely, but it's not, your experience is not the only time we've heard footsteps. In fact, I went out and bought a motion sensor, which I forgot to set up. I forgot to set it up. I did not set it up, and I wanted to. But I have a motion sensor for the next time I try, and I'll put it in that kitchen. The next time I try and do EVP, if they are curious again to find out what I'm doing, maybe they'll set it off.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, something that we often hear about the paranormal, and in particular sometimes the ghost phenomena, is that children are more susceptible or more open to it. Have you ever come across any kind of stories like related to you through a parent, or maybe a kid that comes in with their parents to go on a ghost tour in the house and they say that they've seen something, and then they describe something to you that's just like, it's impossible for you to know that as a child? You know, you're talking about kids that are really young and probably either they know the history, or their mom and dad has explained it to them a little bit, but there's, you know how it is with kids. You can't go into excruciating detail with them about a place. And have you ever had any kids that have come in and said, hey, Mr. Mark, I saw something over there, and then describe for you something that's just blows the top of your head off?
Yeah, but kids are pretty shy usually. You know, they'll see stuff, and by the time they're about 5 or 6 years old, unless their parents the parents themselves are sensitive, you know, a lot of times they're telling the kids, look, you're getting ready to go to school, quit talking about this, you know what I mean? It's your imagination. Don't
give that kid a special test. Get him out of here. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I do know that that's happened, Jeff, but I can't, it's escaping me now, any specific moments, but I know people have come in and said, you know, my child has seen some things, but I can't come up with any specifics. I know that some of our mediums' children are very, very sensitive. One sees the soldiers. One can actually find their graves in an open field.
Wow.
Another one, I must have apparently had a life in another life as a pirate, because one little girl, first of all, she identified me as a pirate. When first time she saw me, it's a pirate. And then secondly, one time in Fredericksburg, there was apparently a spirit that came in, and I reminded him of somebody, and he called me a bloody rogue. So
I'll never be able to picture you now without an eye patch. You do realize that. And the parrot on the shoulder, you know? I mean,
and the parrot on my shoulder, yes.
Well, I mean, it all comes down to, I mean, for you, I mean, your passion in this is Gettysburg, and the history of that, and of course you owning the place there. I mean, it's like you got a front row seat, which I'm so incredibly envious of. But what do you think it is about Gettysburg? I mean, we've talked about time slips, and we've talked about manifestations of phenomena that don't really seem to fit in any good box, that just seem like there's this myriad of things that are going on, but your mind is telling you, oh, come on, it can't be that many things, but then can it? And it all becomes very confusing. So, I mean, what do you ultimately think is the reason for Gettysburg being what it is, which is, I mean, for me, unquestionably one of the most haunted places on the planet that I've been to. Do you think there's a portion of this that's geologically based, or do you think that it's somehow connected to what we've talked about a lot on this show, is people actively going out to look and therefore being more tuned up to it, and therefore somehow the phenomenon recognizes that and then something happens, or is it all of that, do you think?
That's I'll tell you, you just opened up. I mean, really, those are really, really good questions, because, you know, the answer to all those would be yes, you know, for every one of them. For example, is it that Gettysburg, because of the intense emotional energy that was expended there by close to 200,000 men, some dying, some wounded, some just realizing that what's on the line here, you know, is that energy, does that cause this to happen? Does this cause them to, parts of them to remain? Is it geological? We've always had that theory that was given to me about the granite, the quartz-bearing granite that's there. Did it somehow absorb the masses of energy, the electrical energy that was released when the men were killed or when their bones were being broken, you know, in such an incredible amount? Is it that? Is it the fact that Gettysburg, that whole area, was somehow fated, you know, to be a vortex of violence? Because we do know that several thousand years before they ever had the Battle of Gettysburg, there was a huge Native American battle there. I mean, I've been to people in Gettysburg who've lived there all their lives, and they'll pull out in their houses. They'll pull out their mason jar full of bullets. Look at all these bullets I found just walking around. Oh, by the way, here are all the arrowheads too. In other words, a mason jar and more arrowheads fit in a mason jar than mini balls. So I'm saying that there may have been as many Native American warriors there at one time fighting a battle as there were Northerners and Southerners. Was Gettysburg just, is it a vortex drawing that type of thing?
Right.
I don't know, Jeff. That's one of those. That's one of the. Why is it so haunted? That's one of those questions that,
Well, I mean, you've also got what you had tours going in. It was Fredericksburg, am I right?
Correct. Yeah, Fredericksburg.
Now, do you get as much in a place like that as you would? I mean, I mentioned to you the other day Antietam. Some place like that, which was, am I right in saying it was equally, if not worse, in bloodshed there?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, do you get, when you go there, do you seem to readily be able to access decent data from there as you do in Triangle Field or Devil's Den or, any of these, like, what was the other one? Spangler Spring.
Yes.
I mean, is it as good there?
Yeah, we've gotten as much. I haven't spent as much time there, but when I've gone there, for example, a Wilderness or Spotsylvania, or Fredericksburg itself, yes, lots and lots of EVP there. The stories, you hear as many stories in Antietam not quite as many as Gettysburg because I've been collected for a longer time, and I've lived in Gettysburg and get the stories more frequently. But Antietam has a lot of stories. And interestingly enough, a good friend of mine is now the chief historian at Vicksburg, a guy I worked with at Gettysburg. And Carol and I went to visit him this past winter, and he took me on just an unbelievable tour of Vicksburg. I mean, and finally I asked him, I said, Terry, I got a question. I said, first question is ghost stories. Do you have any ghost stories about the battlefield? And he kind of looked at me. He says, Mark, he said, I've been here 30 years. He said, I've heard ghost stories of the town. I haven't heard hardly any on the battlefield.
Huh.
I said, you're kidding. He said, no. I said, then question number 2, what's the geology like here? And he said, 100 feet down, nothing but Mississippi silt under the battlefield. So, there, in other words, no granite. Whereas in the town, you have buildings that have foundations of granite, or they have, maybe granite, maybe some kind of a quartz mixed in with the clay that's used for the bricks or whatever. So, that kind of lends credence to that theory that maybe the quartz has. I always thought that was kind of goofy. I thought that was crazy. How can quartz be affected by electricity? But then, you have your quartz watch on your wrist.
Right.
And it's, and you have
I mean, we had a geologist on the show who, I mean, he didn't poo-poo the idea that this might have some effect, but he said it would have to be such a massive amount to have any effect or any real effect on the brain, or to be able to perceive something that's not there, or for it to affect us in such a way that certain people can perceive certain things. I mean, you had mentioned something about somebody smelling like pipe smoke, and then the person next to them not smelling it. I kind of look at that, and there's many parallels in that to the UFO thing. I mean, a lot of parallels. There are people who have seen very bizarre things in the air, and at the same time, there's been a lot of people who have seen an object in the sky next to a friend who doesn't see it. I had an experience like that myself, where I literally had to drag my wife in front of me before she could see something. I don't know. For some reason, to me, it almost speaks that the phenomena almost picks and chooses, which kind of lends that trickster element to the whole thing. What could be more unbelievable to someone to have an experience standing right next to someone else who has no experience whatsoever?
Right. Exactly. Well, and that happens very frequently, and it could be, we know that EVP is very localized. I'll have someone standing right next to me, or I'll even be holding another recorder, and one will pick up EVP, the other one will not. So we know it's very localized, and so that could be the same with the experience. One person has the experience, the other doesn't. That's why we call it paranormal.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's not normal.
No, definitely not. I mean, I can attest to that. As far as Spangler Spring. When we went up there, and it was before we went to your place, we lost Jeremy in the dark.
Oh, no.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And I found Jeremy far down in the field. And Jeremy, I want you to describe to Mark what you felt when you were all the way down. If you're facing the spring, Mark, all the way down left, towards where you see the faint lights of a house through the woods.
Right.
He was way down in that field, almost right up against the tree line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do I have to preface this by saying that I too am crazy?
Yes.
Mark, I too am crazy. And so I've got this weird energy thing going on with me that I think is Kundalini, which, if you don't know what that is, I mean, essentially when you quiet the mind, when most people meditate and they quiet their mind and they sit there and they concentrate and all that. Well, I don't do that. I quiet my mind and this energy takes over and it does weird things like Tai Chi and, strange prayer ritual looking things and things I'm only peripherally familiar with, that I think is sort of the body's natural language when you step out of the way, maybe something like that. But there is a strange, I've got to admit, component to it that seems like it's also this entity unto its own. I don't know what else to call it. But so I let this thing go. I call it a meditation energy. I let it go, and it walked me down there. Actually, walked me down to that part of the woods, and it's I'm doing these hand gestures and all this sort of stuff, and I had the feeling that I was like surrounded by people, and I smelled like a gunpowder sort of smell. And I don't remember much more, Jeff, than that, except that it seemed that whatever I was doing was almost like communicating with these people, like saying hi or welcoming them or something.
Well, the thing you mentioned to me when I walk down in the field and I see Jeremy kind of bouncing on one foot and kind of karate chopping his forearm. I'm sorry, people. That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, well, it was.
I said, "What's going on?" And you're like, "I'm surrounded." And I said, "Is it bad? Should I drag you out of here?" And you said, "No, it's joyful. It's joyful."
Yeah, it was joyful, and I mean it right, and it brought to mind that maybe, and maybe I think you might have said this to me, Jeff. I'm not sure that perhaps I was, or this thing in me, or whatever, was ushering them somewhere. Like, hey, come to the light, or something.
Yeah.
But there was definitely this sort of...
As cliche as that sounds, yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely this joyful sort of communication going on that I can't really qualify other than to say, it was a felt thing.
So Mark, what at Spangler Spring, what happened there? I mean, what to you would speak to that in a historical sense? Why would there be so many people there at that place?
Well, I'm not sure about the joyfulness of it. I know that was one of the longest ongoing battle areas in the entire battle. The attack on Culp's Hill and the Spangler Spring area did not start until about 7 or 8 o'clock on the night of July 2nd. It lasted until about 10 or 10:30 at night, which must have been pretty horrible because these guys are firing at musket flashes. You don't want to fire your gun because you're going to draw fire. So, and then it died down, and then at 4:30 in the morning again, when it started to get light, they started fighting again and fought till 11. So it was some of the longest fighting in the entire Battle of Gettysburg, and it drew a lot of troops. I mean, there are troops all throughout the Spangler Spring area because that was kind of like the flank of the Union line, the right flank there. So, but I, the fact that Jeremy felt crowded is not unusual.
Okay.
I know Wayne many times will be talking to someone, and then all of a sudden she's like, "No, back up, everybody! Leave me talking to this person. Leave me alone."
Right.
It's as if they say, "Whoa, there's somebody who can hear us."
Well, that's it. I felt like they were happy to see me.
Well,
which makes no sense because I wasn't.
Hey, it's Jeremy.
Yeah, I wasn't seeing anyone. I'm not. I mean, the closest I got to anything, like I said, was the smell of gunpowder.
Right.
But man,
right.
It just felt like, boy, there's a bunch of people crowding around, and they're glad to see me.
Well, Patty Wilson told me that once, and I was honored because one time we went out to the Daniel Lady Farm, and we're standing out there in that front room, and she's got a big smile on her face. I said, "What's up, Patty?" And she said, "They're happy to see you." I said, "What do you mean?" "The soldiers are happy to see you because you bring people who can hear them."
Wow.
And who want to talk to them. I'm like, believe me, I am honored beyond words. Because my respect for what they did and the courage that they maintained throughout the entire Civil War is just words fail me when I try and explain that.
And courage almost sounds trite when you think about. I mean, they've built this glorious new museum up there, and we went up to see the surrounding painting that they've done on the walls. I mean, you're talking about. I mean, all due respect to World War II vets at Normandy. I mean, that's akin to the same thing. These guys are running into bullets, just screaming bloody murder, and they're doing it. I mean, yeah. I can't imagine the kind of fortitude that these people had to do that. It's just, it's beyond what words can really say. I mean, there's no words to describe that kind of courage to do that. But I'll tell you that we took, I think it was the next weekend or two afterwards, when Jeremy had his experience up at Spangler, we took my son and his girlfriend up there, and Lisa and I went up. And his girlfriend, who knew so nothing about the Civil War, in fact, she referred to it as the Soviet Union.
Okay.
She was cute, okay? Give the kid a break, all right? She said, it's so strange. And I said, what's strange? And she was standing beside me in this open field, right about where Jeremy was. She's like, it feels like they're all around us, like they're surrounding us.
Wow.
And my jaw just dropped to the floor. I'm like, here's this girl who doesn't really know too awful much about the history of this place at all, doesn't know what we saw or felt there, and she uses exactly the same verbiage to describe how she feels there. I mean, it's too much for me.
Well, interestingly enough, we were at the engine house, and she was standing there talking to somebody, and one of our group took a picture of her. Mm-hmm. And as they always do, they take at least 3 and sometimes 4 pictures. And all of a sudden, Lane started saying, get away, you're crowding me. The woman took another picture, and then took another picture after that when Lane was saying, okay, good, I can just talk to this one person. Well, the 2 pictures on either side were absolutely clear. I don't know what you think about orbs. I know what I think about them. Right. But during that time when she was saying, get away, the photograph was filled with orbs. So that's one of those situations where I don't know whether that proves anything. I mean, dust was dust. Dust should have been in all 3 photos. Right. Coincidence, I don't know if there are such things as coincidences in the paranormal.
True.
But, that was very interesting. I think you're right. I think they do, in Jeremy's case, I think they do have a tendency to respond to us and to realize, hey, this person is open to us, so let's go check it out.
Right.
Let me ask you, speaking of photographs, did you get a chance to check out, this is a photo that Jeff took while we were there, of a potential ghost child that we never posted online, because I think Jeff wanted to check out the place and make sure it wasn't just a trick of light and shadow. Did you look at it, Mark? And if so, what were your thoughts?
Yes, I did, and I think I really think it's fabulous because it corresponds also. See, so many times we have to, it's not just one photo that tells you, well, maybe it could be a little boy, maybe it might not. But we also had numerous other reports of people seeing or hearing a child in that house. In fact, the very first time I had a medium go through there, Carol Kirkpatrick from Lancaster went through, and she said, you're going to hear marbles on this floor, and the marbles from a child playing. And we were like, okay, well, it's carpet on the floor. She said, doesn't matter. You're going to hear them. So and then time and time again, we had one of our employees actually see a child there. We've had so many different reports that in conjunction with that photo, tells me that photo is real.
Huh.
And it's the same description. A little boy, tow-headed, kind of dirty blonde hair, suspenders, white shirt. And if you look at that photo, that's exactly what it shows.
And of course, you're there all the time, so you know that particular part of the building. Does the light fall in such a way that it could be something else? I mean, Jeff, did you check it out again to see?
I haven't been up there actually because.
Of course, there was no light, right? Because it was.
Well, no, there was a small light on the table that Mark does his book signings on, but that really didn't have much light being cast at all. I mean, it was I used a night shot type of setting on the camera, kind of like I think they call it a nightscape or something like that. And I'm not even sure I took it. It might have been my son, or it might have been Lisa, or that night it could have been everywhere because, I mean, the camera was getting passed around a lot. Right. But we know that Violet Rage / Lisa, the Lisa that's not my wife, was downstairs with Jason, and they heard children in that direction very, very clearly, and we picked that up on the EVP, but we also picked it up on a camera in the stairwell, which is ridiculous because I was in the stairwell coming down and I didn't hear anything. But when I went back up the stairs after they had told me, we heard kids back there and now it's all stopped. I went back upstairs and grabbed my wife, and we were coming down the stairs and heard just like ever so slight whispers coming from the area which is Mark's business place, where, you know, his cash register is, where his counter is, and all of that. That's the new part. And it was almost as if kids were saying, "They're coming, we got to go," or something like that. And then you heard bumping and kind of creak and cracking throughout the house. And you know what, Mark, for an old house, the place is quiet. I mean, unless you're moving, there's no creaking going on unless you're moving. We heard nothing in the way of house sounds as far as house settling. I didn't hear anything like that. But by golly, when 3 o'clock rolled around, that place turned into a carnival. I mean that in every true sense. I mean, we had some interesting experiences all night long, but come 3 o'clock, wow, it was like, what, are you kidding me?
Yeah, well, that's when I picked up. I did an experiment once. I took my recorder and I put it in that back room, and I put it on voice activation, and you can hear me walking out. And it was a snowy, quiet night, and you can hear me closing the door, walking out. And now that question is, I can't remember whether I said it, well, you know, whether I had reset the clock on the recorder for daylight savings time or not daylight, whatever. But at according to the recorder, at 3:55, which could have been 2:55, okay, it started recording, and it recorded 42 or 43 minutes of EVP with no one in the house. A couple of times you can hear a snowplow go by, so you know what real noise is, as opposed to the EVP. But it recorded, about that time in the morning, it recorded all kinds of activity up there, 40-some minutes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Are there church bells that go off in the middle of the night?
There's the question.
No. Not that I know of.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know when it was. I mean, it was before we went to bed, so it had to have been between 4 and 5, right?
It was 3:30, wasn't it? Wasn't it like 3:30, 3:45?
I mean, that's what scared me. I was sitting in that back room by myself.
Yes.
And that was the thing that scared me. It was like all of a sudden I hear loud church bells. I'm like, that's not possible. And but it was so obvious that it was like, that has to... I couldn't wait for it to be on the tape, but then the tape mysteriously wasn't running or something, right, Jeff?
Well, that was the camera in the back room, which was the carriage trimming room, and all the way bottom floor back, because that's where we all felt the most uncomfortable. There in the is it the green room, Mark, or the blue room? Green room.
Well, you mean the green room? Yeah, the green room. You felt most uncomfortable there.
Green room we felt really weird in. In fact, it was oppressively heavy when Jeremy and I first went in there, and then it lightened right away. the next time we came down. But that very back room, past the room where you do the book signings, is that kind of like your
the kitchen.
Yeah,
basically the old kitchen. Yeah,
right. I mean, that just felt bizarre all the time. Now, whether or not it was just because it was, I mean, there's certainly a portion of it that it's because it's dark,
right?
Because it's utilitarian, and it just kind of, it's a little bit like, am I in a Saw movie or am I at Mark Nesbitt's? I mean, it's where, the tour guides fix their candles into the lanterns and all that kind of stuff. So there's, a little workspace there, but it's just scary back there. So I put a camera back, and for some odd reason, about 3:00, I went down to start checking stuff, and Jason had said, "Oh yeah, your tape ran out back there. I forgot to come get you." Thanks, Jason. Because we would have got the kids on that camera.
Yeah.
And we didn't because stuff started happening. But yeah, the cameras all started to flake out about the same time, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because most of them, I know the one in the stairwell, and I'm pretty sure the one in that back room, it still had tape on it.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. Around the time you heard the kids giggling or whatever in that room, or Jason and Lisa had heard them giggling in the room, was around the time the tape stopped. So that was sort of the joke, was like, gee, I wonder if the kids turned off the camera.
Off the camera, right. Yeah. I mean,
or drained the battery. I think that was it. It was that the battery was drained.
But no, I have not been back up into that room since we were there. So I'm definitely going to go up in the next couple of weeks. And if I can shoot some test shots back there, I'd love to.
Sure.
To kind of check the lights out and stuff, just to avoid that pitfall. But
just to be clear, there's not a church with church bells that goes off at around 3:30 and 4 in the morning.
No, the closest church would be a Catholic church up 2 or 3. That would be the they just ring their bells on Sunday mornings, and I don't know if they ring them at noon or not, but no, there wouldn't be any bells going off.
Because that would be something that the town would complain about.
What's that?
I said that would be something the town would complain about, right? Church bells.
Right? Yeah. No. I've heard them go off on a Sunday morning. 7:30, 8 o'clock. But no, you wouldn't hear them in the middle of the night. But isn't it neat to have a place like that you can? I mean, we can control it. I mean, I own it. Well, me and Mrs. Kitzmiller own it. But I can control the environment in a haunted place, and we can run experiments in that place, very much like you did. And you can control it. It's not like you're out on the battlefield and you're getting EVP, and all of a sudden you listen to it later on and you hear something in it, and then you have to say, well, were those kids playing or what was it? Right. No, we can lock it down, and that's the nice part about it. Now, we haven't done anything in the cellars yet. We haven't done anything in the basement. We did some up in the attic, and we've got a game cam shot that we can't explain. Rick Fisher got a video of two orbs, one following the other through the frame, and a voice going, "Catch me."
Huh.
Once again, possibly the children. And so, that's the nice part about that. I mean, I lived in several historic houses when I was a park ranger out there in the battlefield. But this is the first one that I can really, lock down and use it as a laboratory, basically.
Right. Well, we're still talking about getting a few listeners together and coming up there. We'll have to set a date for that. But we're kind of rounding out the hour here, Mark. Do you want to go ahead and read off the list of all the stuff that you got going on? Because we want you to be able to promote that stuff. Okay.
Well, first weekend in June, I'm getting together with Patrick Burns of TV's Haunting Evidence. He's coming to Gettysburg with a group. And I'm going to be taking them through the Lady Farm. And so that's going to be very interesting. That's the first weekend in June. The end of August, Chris Moon. He's a guy that told me about Edison's communication box, that he's seen it and worked with it. He's going to be coming to Gettysburg, and we're going to be working together.
Nice.
Of course, our Mysterious Journeys weekends and our Ghost Quest weekends are getting set up now for next year. They're in January and February and March. But if people want to see when these things are happening, they need to go to our ghostsofgettysburg.com. That's our website, and it's the events page. and also to ghostchannel.tv for the Ghost Quest EVP that I told you about earlier. So a lot of that stuff is happening soon. Ghosts of Gettysburg 7. I'm wrapping that up. My EVP book. I was working on that today. That's going to be an online downloadable book. And then people can also go to our. Kel just told me this today because I am technologically illiterate when it comes to all this stuff. But apparently, Ghosts of Gettysburg has a Facebook page, as well as the Mysterious Journeys Weekend.
Nice.
And Ghosts of Fredericksburg. All those have a Facebook page all their own. So there's lots going on, both in the social networking and actually in Gettysburg that I'm going to be associated with in the next few months. And please, Jeff, let me know if you guys want to come down sometime and spend another sleepless night.
Oh yeah. I'm ripe. I could go tomorrow. Mark, your ghost tours, are they in full swing now? Every night? What nights do they run?
7 days a week. Yep, we're open. It's the season, and actually This is a good time for people to go because everything's open, but it's not crowded. So if people want to come up and take a ghost tour, they can. And Fredericksburg, have them check the website, Ghosts of Fredericksburg, because we're not running those right now, but we will be doing them on select weekends throughout the summer. Okay.
How early should people, if people want to come in the evening to do a ghost tour, which I assume, what time do they start, that you start running tours for the nightly tours?
First tour goes out at 8 o'clock. And, of course, during the week, we just have one tour that goes out, the Baltimore Street Tour. Weekends, we have a full schedule if we have the number of people. But everything starts at 8 o'clock. But they'll want to call, a day or two ahead or earlier in the day to get a reservation because we have to have only a certain number of people on the tours.
Yeah, I know it does get unbelievably packed, and they sell it great because I can tell you that Mark has the best tour because God knows I've been up there enough now. You're not going to get better than Mark Nesbitt's tour. That's without question. So go check that out. Mark, one last question for you, and this is kind of speaking to your side of the fence with the ghost investigation stuff. You've been in this a long time. How do you avoid being broken by the field? Because I have no doubt that you have as many flakes and lunatics and outright con people in that side of the fence as we do on this side. And admittedly, we probably have more. How do you maintain the balance of not wanting to rip somebody's head off? How do you continue to be involved in a field that is marginalized by itself so much by just some people that get into? I mean, you're such an honest man, and it seems you almost seem out of place in this, and that you never hear of Mark Nesbitt's really climbing up so-and-so's ass this week. You don't hear that about you. I mean, how do you exist for so long in this and be one of the most not only well-liked on this show, but well-liked people on the field as a whole? I mean, you never hear a bad word about Mark Nesbitt. How do you do that?
People aren't listening to my wife enough, apparently. But no, Kel and I were talking about that just the other day because there's so many things that you hear about, people that we've been involved with that are, but the thing is you have to look at it in terms of the history of the field as well. Mm-hmm. Back in the, for 30 or 40 years, spiritualism and everything, and things were getting really, really legitimate. After a while, you had brilliant people like William James, Henry James, the author, his brother, William James, who was one of the he was the American Sigmund Freud, he brought he was a great psychologist. And you had other people that were involved, Arthur Conan Doyle, that were involved in this field, some heavy hitters. Mm-hmm. Then the phonies started showing up, and the table rappers and things like that, and people discovered them, and then they painted the whole field according to them. And that's what I told Carol. I said the only way you can really determine someone if they're good for it is what has been their contribution to the field. And that's the way I look at it. Is their contribution been extensive? Has it been legitimate, or are they just in it to get on TV? Right. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, if so it's just do your thing and kind of do your thing, and that's it. I mean, do your due diligence, do it well, keep records, don't fake anything. Right. Keep notes, watch for parallels, jot them down, and make sure you have them. You just have to work it like any other science. Yeah. Have double-blind experiments when you do things. Keep everything clean. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Well, Mark, thanks. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, Jeff. Because that's true. I mean, but I'm
Wait, let me jot this down. Don't fake anything.
Right? Yeah, make sure you write that down, Jeremy. That's probably number one. But Mark, we really thank you for being on again. It's another hour and practically an hour and a half of great stuff, and you're without a doubt our favorite person on this show. So thank you again for coming out and for being on with us at relatively short notice too, I might add. Okay. And we will definitely get a group together to come up there very soon. And like I said, I'll be up this weekend, so I might see you there. Yeah, good. Okay. Sounds great. Thanks again for having me, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
I know.
Hi, my name's Greg Bishop, and you're listening to Paratopia, where I just got asked questions that I never get asked, and got to talk about things that I never get to talk about.
Hey gang, it's Jeremy Vaeni here once again to shill for myself. The 2 for $20 sale, that is my DVD, No One's Watching, an Alien Abductee Story, in my book, I Know Why the Aliens Don't Land. 2 for $20. That's right, you get them both for a mere $20 by sending me a little message at paratopiapodcast@gmail.com, and I will send you an invoice through PayPal. Once again, be aware that the DVD is Region 1, which means it plays in the US and Canada, and probably not in y'all's home country of elsewhere. So, send me an email, I'll send you the goods, and a surprise free gift.
Eerie Radio, the endeavor for esoteric research and investigation into the enigmatic. Eerie Radio is a weekly podcast that features interviews with the world's leading paranormal researchers. Download episodes of Eerie Radio from your favorite podcatcher or directly from the show website at www.eerieradio.com. Eerie Radio. Listen, learn, laugh.
Hey, it's Jer again. So this is weird. I'm editing the show together, and I think I've caught an EVP. This is something that I heard while we were recording last night, but I didn't say anything because I wanted to make sure that it was there and that it didn't sound like it was coming from Jeff or Mark Nesbitt. Surely it does not. And then, of course, I emailed to Jeff saying, I think I found this EVP, blah, 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 and he knew exactly what I was talking about. He knew exactly where it was in the conversation, and he said the reason he didn't mention it is because he felt stupid. So, but here it is. I'll play it for you. I'll say it's a potential EVP because who knows, but it's very crystal clear that it is somebody open mouth breathing right when Mark Nesbitt is talking about having captured an EVP of a ghost taking a deep breath. So here you go. Let's see what you think.
Half the room heard 2 very deep breaths. By somebody breathing in and out. And the weird part is I did not record it.
Notice how after he says half the room heard, he inhales. You can tell exactly what his inhalation sounds like, so that later when you hear the it's very clearly not him. Of course, it's also happening sort of while he's speaking. And we all know that Jeff's microphone is louder than everybody else's, so I don't think it's him. It doesn't sound like his breathing. We've all heard that. And it's not me, because I'm the one listening to it. And in fact, Jeff said he heard it too, so there's further evidence it's not him. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I'll play it one more time, and then I'll just isolate where I'm talking about.
Half the room heard 2 very deep breaths, like somebody breathing in and out. And the weird part is I did not record it. And the weird part is I did not record it. And the weird
part is, on we go with the after chat, like none of this ever happened. So, Jeff.
Hey, Jer, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I feel like crap, pretty much.
You want to talk about that?
Sinus headache for 2 days.
Oh, man.
Feels like somebody's running a buzzsaw through my skull on the right side. Yeah,
sorry
good.
To hear. Well, we'll try to make this painless.
My suffering is legendary, even in hell.
Mark Nesbitt, eh?
God, I mean,
that was a great interview.
Does it get any better than Mark Nesbitt? I don't think it does. He and Colin Andrews. If we get the two of those guys on a show together, we've got a blockbuster. Mark's always great. I mean, he's such a nice man, and he's always out doing the deed. He's always out gathering data or taking people through a home location and seeing what they can catch, and it's just great. I mean, he's always got something going on. So I think he's a wellspring of ghost information and observation and all of that. So I always like having him on.
I guess there's only one question that I thought about asking him, and I thought probably the answer is no. I haven't had anything like that. But I just wonder if ghosts are kind of like dream characters, where if you press them enough, even though they seem nice, they suddenly become really bad.
Oh, you mean like people in ufology?
Yes. Yeah, like people in ufology. No, but where they become like you think it's a cute little kid you're talking to, but if you press the kid enough, suddenly it's clear that he is a ghost. You know what I mean? Like suddenly things are being thrown at you and, get out and that sort of thing. I mean, does it turn into this, or can it turn into this nightmarish scenario if you don't play along with the character of nice ghost, cute little ghost boy?
I'll tell you what would be, and we'll at some point in the future we'll have Mark on again, but I think another question would be, does the demeanor of the ghost change based on the observer's mindset, the observer's emotions, that sort of thing? Like, as with some other phenomena in the paranormal, does it reflect? Is it empathic in that sense?
The good thing is we'll at least get a chance to find all this stuff out for ourselves when we go back up there. So I think that's...
Or when you're dead.
Or when we're dead.
There's always that.
You can always get a 2-for-1 when you go ghost hunting.
Right, that's true.
But I know we've said this a million times, but I just think it's great that he... now he knows us a little better, but essentially barely knew us when he had us up there, and he's willing to let us go back again and bring listeners and all that. I think that's fantastic.
Well, I mean, as I said, I mean, I've met a lot of people in the paranormal / UFO thing, and, I'll say that flatly. I think he and Colin Andrews are two of the most accommodating, kind people that you're going to meet. So he's an amazing guy, and he does. I like Mark because he's got such a, I don't know, he's almost got kind of an innocence about the field, but yet he's sharp as a tack with it. But yet you can tell when he starts talking about the stories that he's like a kid in a candy store. He just loves it. He really is passionate about what he does, and I think that's great. I mean, and he certainly has been around for so long doing this, and that's why I asked, like, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's got to be things that aggravate you so much, but you don't get involved or you don't say anything. You focus. I mean, that's what he said. You focus on your your endeavor, and that's what you do, and you keep your head down and plow through. That's sage advice from one of the guys that has been in this longer than anyone. So
now, are you going to be releasing that little kid photo now that we've talked about it again and reminded people that it exists?
Yeah, after I'm going to go up this weekend and take some test shots and see what I get. I mean, again, it's a simple caveat that I said on the message board, and I think I said on the show, is that, before I could remove that picture off the camera did leave my hands, and I can't not say that. I can't not.
Well, people get that.
Make that known, because I don't want. I know. Yeah, really. I can't in good conscience say I saw this clean through. I saw it removed from the camera. I can vouch for it because I can't do that. But certainly, Mark, when I showed it to him, he's like, oh well. He was surprised at it, and he was like happy that we got something like that. But ultimately, he said, yeah, we've had reports of children down there a lot. He even told us that beforehand, for God's sake. So, but he said that one of the mediums I think that they work with, or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was just a person that worked for them up there, said that they saw, like a dirty blonde-haired kid, by the door. Jeremy making faces at me over Skype cam.
Sorry.
By that doorway, by the steps, is where I think he said that they had seen him before. So it's nothing new to them. Certainly new to me. But, the only thing I want to rule out is that trick of light and shadow thing, and I honestly don't think that that's what it is. So I don't have a good explanation for it, and that's the most I can say. I can say that I had to work with it quite a bit to raise the levels in it to get it to where I feel that it's as clear as it can be. Mm-hmm. And that's what we will be posting, is something that people will be able to readily see. So the original was just practically all dark. Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't really have much light down there. So they can make of it what they will. Much like every other bit of paranormal evidence, it's got its pros and cons, but I think it's interesting, to say the least.
Right. Do we have any other Mark Nesbitt discussion before we make our announcement?
Only you guys listening. I'm gonna be talking to Mark maybe this weekend or something, and we'll set a date when we want to go back up there and camp in his upstairs and downstairs and do an investigation and see what we get. I've upgraded the equipment cache, mm-hmm. So we've got new tools to take with us and new stuff to use. We've got a couple of the Zoom mics now and 2 new cameras. What else? Well, we've got our old equipment to take as well, so we'll be able to loan some stuff out to listeners who go. I think a safe bet will be to take 3 to 4 listeners with us. With you and I think we'll leave the wife and kid home this time, for me at least, because I think, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think that our last one, while it was great, I think as I told Mark, it just seemed like there was too many people, and it was hard to get the house quiet in the sense of people walking upstairs and down the steps and all of that. Mm-hmm. You really need to go into this environment quiet and observing and I don't know, I felt like it might have been a little too overcrowded, but it was our first time. We didn't really realize the environment and the size and all that. So now we know, now we can plan accordingly for that. So I think it'll ultimately be could possibly be more fruitful this time to go. So stay tuned for that because we'll be telling you. And again, people, it's first come, first go. So the first 3 to 4 that commit are the ones that are going to go with us. So we'll be talking about that within the next couple episodes, I guess.
So the Jeff.
Yes.
Let us move on into
the future. Yes.
New territory. Yes, the future of Paratopia, the demise of Jeff and Jeremy. We are simultaneously quitting podcasting while revolutionizing it.
I don't even know if we're quitting. Can you really say we're quitting?
We're coming out of our cocoon and becoming like butterflies.
Oh my God, that's so...
Well, here's the thing. Here's the truth. We were going to quit
Yeah.
And pretty much on the day that we decided, you know what, we don't have a lot left to say, we also realized, but there's a lot left to say, and we have a lot of listeners, so perhaps it's time for them to say it. So we'll get into what that means in a minute, but do you want to just say a few words about why we're doing this? Why we're leaving, basically?
Yeah.
Because I think you and I basically agree, and I think you're more eloquent about it than I am. So,
really? That's great. Well, I mean, for me, it comes down to a very simple thing, which I think I may have probably mentioned before, excuse me, at some point in the past, that I'm genuinely embarrassed to be associated with what I perceive to be this field lately, namely the UFO stuff, not so much any of the other things we've talked about, like the crop circles or the ghost stuff, but you know, the focus of this show has by and large been in the ufological sense of things, although we've branched out to connect the dots here and there. I mean, we've got... what you do is you step back and you take stock every now and then. And when I did that, I look and I see we've got this exopolitical thing going on that's building entire infrastructures and of diplomacy and contact procedures and all this that feels a shitload more like wish fulfillment than what critical thought ought to be for this modern day. That sounds more like the contactee movement of the 50s. You know, these people like seem to garner the most mainstream attention. And I might make note of this, is that they're similarly coloring this phenomena for like the public, because they are in the public mainstream attention. They're coloring this subject just exactly the way Jacobs and Hopkins colored the abduction scenario for the public. And it's with their own agendas and their own desires and their own wish fulfillment needs. It's a mess. So, you know, aside from our listeners who seem to like genuinely want to question the mainstream thought, the problem is that the majority of the UFO interested public doesn't. They're not interested in changing the long held ideologies in this. I think I largely agree with what Phil and Brockno said, is that this is more akin to a religious thing than the study of an unknown phenomena. And I think longstanding researchers, for the most part, with a few exceptions, namely most of the ones that we've had on the show, they're completely unwilling to leave the past theories, you know, in the past and move on to unknown territory. They'd rather beat that same old dusty drum. And here, I got news for you people. The drum that they're beating is a funeral drum for this field. You know, this field has stagnated to such a degree that trying to inject anything new, any new ideas, any, you know, changing your own theories based on your own new discoveries or directions that you might, you know, threads you might pull on, that doesn't earn you people listening. That doesn't earn you people going, there's something to think about. What it earns you is more scorn than it does meaningful discussion of those ideas. And I'm not interested in really discussing belief systems. And I'm not interested in fighting some new age religion. And that, to me, is what ufology has become, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. That is how I see it. And, you know, you can knock that down to three basic premises, is that there's no solid, undeniable proof of this. It exists largely as an article of faith. And it started as an experience, and once the mainstream grabs a hold of it, it's an ideology. And I'm not interested in those. Now, our guest on this show, because when Jeremy and I started this, we said, we're going outside the field. We're not going to keep harping the same old people. We're not going to have, like, SmackDown shows and all of that. We have... And you guys, you listeners, I'm sure you probably realize to some degree on the message board, if you read it, that we've had a hell of a hard time getting mainstream scientists and solid researchers to our table to talk about stuff that is genuinely outside of the norm for this field. We did do it, though. That's one thing I personally am really proud of, this show, what we've done with it. I know Jeremy does as well, I thank every single guest that we ever had on this program for coming on, because all of you who came on this show as a guest, from Whitley all the way to what will be our last guest, as for this version of the show, all of you made this show exactly what we wanted it to be, which was questioning the trends, ignoring the nonsense, and making new threads to pull on. And every guest that we had was fucking brilliant. You're talking about the rarest of gems in a field that is rife with ridiculous and mediocrity. So for me, that's what made this show, is the people that agreed to come on and talk with us in an honest and open way. In the end, for me, I feel like I go back to episode 1 with Whitley Strieber, and he said that he was this purveyor of useless knowledge, and I didn't get it. I didn't get what he meant by that. I understood it to a degree, but I thought, well, how can you say that? Because people do want to hear what you have to say, and I think people do want to hear what we've presented on this show. But in the broad sense, aside from our listeners and our guests, people don't want new ideas. They don't want dismantlement of theories, and they want confirmation of their own desires. And when you don't do that, you're a purveyor of ideas that no one wants. And so this field on the whole does not want new ideas. And it wants to be what it's always been, which is this same thing. So I think the word futile is the word I'm looking for here. And any of you listening will realize this after you're in this for any significant length of time. And I think some of you already do know that. You'll find out you never seem to get where you want to go. Now, whether you can attribute that to an Hansenism or you can attribute it to just how screwed up people are in this. So in the end, I don't feel like I personally have any more to offer right at this moment in a field that operates the way this one does. I feel like, when I stepped into this 20 plus years ago, the fringe was the minority, and now I feel like it's the majority. And so for me, the ship of fools is going down, and it'll eventually hit bottom, but this rat's not going to be on board. This mystery that we've talked about so much on this show, that we refer to as the anomaly or the other or whatever you want to call it, is so far from being even remotely understood. Yet everyone wants to give you an answer, and everybody wants to be right. But I've never seen such a group so unwilling to state the obvious, which is, I don't know what this is. And there it is. The not knowing, with all of the technology that we have and all the analytical minds that we've got on this thing, that the fact that we're still being evaded by this thing, to me, is far more fascinating than anyone's theory or ideology could be. And everyone in this field that I'm talking about that is on this ship of fools is scared to death of that. So from my standpoint here, this is where I say, and this is what brings us to the future of what Paratopia, or what we want it to be, is that more voices are needed. Am I right, Jer?
Yeah. I ditto everything that you just said, and I'll just say that for me, where I really see this in action is with the Emma Woods case. That's really what hits home with me. It's funny, I just recorded, I think it'll be on in 2 weeks from now, an episode of the Black Fridays, and the hosts, it's Wes Owsley and Stacey Lowry, I believe, asked, so you guys seem really reinvigorated after the Emma Woods thing. And my answer was, yeah, and we're quitting. Because while on the one hand it was reinvigorating in that here's something real and rational, in my mind, and this is strictly my opinion, this is a case of a coward abusing a woman because he has formulated this fearful scenario in his head that he thinks is playing out and he's a part of it. And ultimately that's what that boils down to, whether, again, for the millionth time, whatever you think of Emma Woods, whether, she has mental problems or whatever, isn't the point. The point is this coward is using her as a shield from hypothetical, hybrids. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I think that is such a probably legal matter and definitely moral matter. And it's again, it's rational. It's something you can sink your teeth into and get a yes or no out of. And I think that it was covered by a couple of camps that fancy themselves as sort of rational, which we are one of. And I think it was a strong enough damning case against Jacobs and Hopkins by proxy and their entire research method and, hypnosis in general, and going back to Lilienfeld again, who really brought down that deck of cards, or at least blew on it. And then I think Emma Woods just sort of pulled the rug out from under it, and the whole thing collapsed. And I think it was so obvious to them that they then had to go on a damage control campaign, involving emailing us, involving, going on another show, involving, going on his own website and making disclaimers, involving this weekend. I guess they're going to be speaking about the hybrid situation here in New York. So it's all this damage control campaign for little old us, for something that we brought to light. And then you go to Above Top Secret, is the litmus test, because they're the biggest message board on the paranormal and conspiracy there is. And they still want to talk about like Martian anomalies, moon anomalies, Area 51, Chet the Martian, whatever.
I will point out that it did hit today. Someone did mention it in a thread and listed all three of our shows.
Yeah, I saw that, but that's like, it's weeks
long
later.
after the fact, yes.
It's long after the fact, and it's a mention in a thread. It's not its own thread. It's not, oh my God, look at this.
Right.
In other words, I mean, so far, it's not demanding huge public scrutiny. And why is that? Because you look at what is, and it's all the wish fulfillment stuff. It's all the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. It's what this field has become. So I think what we represent is not what this field wants. And I think that's clear. And I think mainly that stems from the fact that way back when the Air Force and scientists decided to stop looking into this, and so it became an amateur sport. And I think in the beginning, there probably were a lot of good amateurs in that sport and a lot of scientifically minded people and smart people. And over time, I think society changed, and I think the ufological scene itself changed in tandem to where we, our educational system is such that we pop out idiots and people who don't know how to use. They don't know how to think properly. They don't know how to question properly. And we are trained to like memorize things, right? We're not trained to like be creative and explore new avenues of thought. We're trained to memorize. And I think all of that sort of stuff, coupled with being told over and over again through the media that you are special, your individualism matters, you deserve me, this me generation stuff, I think has supplanted actual critical thinking with, because you have the ability to open your mouth, it means that, 9 times out of 10 people think that means that they should, and that any opinion out of their mouth is equally valid to any other opinion, as if to say there are no real experts in anything, just whatever I can wrap my mind around, except that you don't know that your mind isn't capable of wrapping around certain things. And here's a subject that is the unknown, at least, and perhaps the unknowable. So perhaps even the greatest thinkers can't wrap their minds around it, but how do you even approach it? And I think the people who are qualified to approach it have left the building and
are working on their own.
Are working on their own, are working in silence, all of that. So I think that's what brought us here, is all I'm saying. I think that's the history of mainstream leaving this behind, it being picked up by amateurs who then gave way to dumb amateurs, who then gave way to egomaniacal, I'm a Time Lord, I'm a starseed, I'm a this, I'm a that, because now you've got all of this, hypnotically retrieved testimony, contactee testimony, et cetera, mythology, all of this stuff that you can play with and make your own backstory, go on a message board and say, this is who I am. Is anyone else like this? And then you've got a cavalcade of people claiming to be that,
It's a mess.
It's play acting at this point. It's not but again, there's obviously we have a large listenership, and that listenership, demands better. So how do we give them better? Well, I mean, like Jeff said, I agree that it's embarrassing, this field, and I agree that I don't have much left to say at this point. Now, I would like to take some time to just delve back into my own experiences, and if something major occurs, then I would certainly share that with you, but I don't need to share every little step along the way, because I think that's just keeping me from actually getting to where I need to go, probably. So I would like to have time to do that and to work on other projects with Jeff, and concentrate on other things and in bettering Paratopia. That's what I would like to do. But like I said, I know that even though we're done speaking, that doesn't mean that there's nothing left to say. And so we had decided to quit and to call it quits at 70 episodes. But then when we announced that, we Jeff and I both saw this post by Brad on the message board saying, well, why don't you, I feel like we're not just listeners of this show, we're Paratopians, we've got this community and we love being here. Why don't you give the show to Eric and I and see what we can do with it? And that inspired two halves of a whole idea in Jeff and I. He had called me and he said, I have this idea. And I said, I do too. And they were both inspired by Brad. So thank you, Brad.
Yes.
And the whole idea is this. After 70 episodes, we're going to weave ourselves out, and we're going to weave you listeners in. So what that means is, and we'll put this on the message board so that you have like something strict to look at, something more disciplined than my words here in this podcast. But essentially what we're asking for is for people to, if you're an experiencer, send us up to 2 hours of your experiences, but not just, hey, this is what happened to me, but really get into it deeply the way that we do on this show. Tell us how it evolved in you, how you evolved with it. All of the deep sort of questions that we ask, please ask yourself and illuminate us with it. And send us that audio at paratopiapodcast@gmail.com, and we will edit it, and we will post it, and that will be a show. If you're not an experiencer, or even if you are and you'd rather do this, or also do this, send us a lecture. If you are an expert in a field that's applicable to this and you have a lecture that you want to give, something along those lines, school us, take us to school. We'll use that as a show. So these are the kinds of things that we would like to do. Now, obviously, you're going to want to keep it to the material. We don't care about your personal political rants or any of that sort of, this isn't therapy for people.
Well, that would be the part where edits come in.
I mean, you'll just know that we'll edit that out. So,
yeah.
And eventually what this will turn into is that user content, plus we will set up people who would like to, at our discretion, to interview the luminaries in this field, so that no longer are we doing the interviews, but you're doing the interviews. And we will mediate that. We'll sit on the line and record it and just, sit back and let you go. And you talk to these people and you get the answers that you want from them, or at least ask the questions that you want to ask from them. Whether you get the answers, who knows? And I think it's not enough to just complain that people don't know how to critically think and blah, blah, blah. I think it's time to actually start a new movement of deep thinkers. And I know from doing our roundtable discussion that, at least that handful of you had a lot of great things to say and a lot of great questions. And I think it's time for your voices to be heard, and to revolutionize podcasting and to revolutionize this field if possible. By ignoring all of the noise of that Dungeons and Dragons stuff, all of that stuff that Jeff and I, when we do the show, are not disciplined enough to avoid. I think we totally will, because we'll be stepping out of the way and just concentrating on helping you guys and gals get your voices heard, and that's it. And we won't pay attention to any of the nonsense. In fact, I think that will just go away. And if all 100,000 of you did this, we would no longer have a field to bitch about. We would be the field, the field, the field.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, and the way I look at this is that we are two guys. We are certainly not the only people around that are capable of asking the kind of questions that we do. Our listenership is the biggest bunch of really intelligent, thoughtful people that I've ever come across on the internet. And our two voices, between Jeremy and I, were not enough to make it happen. And so that's why I say that more voices have to be heard in this. And so if you guys band with us, then that can enact some kind of change, maybe. If we don't try it, we'll never know. But if we've got a community of people that are all listening to each other and we're still making compelling radio that people want to listen to, then that's what it's all about, is pushing out new ideas from all sorts of different people, not just Jeremy and I. It takes more than us. It takes all of us to make this happen. And that's, for me, is where this came from, because I think it was Brad, again, Jeremy, that said that they felt like they had a form of ownership of this show. They felt a part of it. And I thought, how great is that? I mean, that made me feel so good to feel that people felt that close to this show and what it did, that there's no way you can walk from that. You can't walk away from that.
Well, here's the other thing, and I know it's uncouth to say how many listeners you have, but I think that's a selling point on how this show is going to go forward. Within 63, this is our, 64th episode?
Yes.
We've accumulated well over, what is it, between 115 and 120,000 people listen to this show.
Subscribers, yeah.
So, listen to the show, and, that's within 64 episodes and growing. So, you can't just, it's hard to abandon that. It's hard to say, bye, guys. We got nothing left to say, bye.
Right.
I think just going by the message board, which is growing and growing as well, we've got a lot of really smart, thoughtful people. So, let's just know that when you put together your audio, you're speaking to well over 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So how you represent yourself and how we're going to edit to represent this show, just keep all of that in mind. And as far as the interviews go, like I said, that's at our discretion. So please don't email us and hound us why can't I do this? Well, probably we're not going to start doing that. We'll tap people. We'll start tapping people based on what we hear in their user content. Yeah. I think it's going to have to go that way. Whether we think it's appropriate for you to speak to X person or, I don't know. We'll see how this all plays out. We're tiptoeing into new territory here. So all I'm saying is please don't harass us. That's all I need to say.
We're not being gatekeepers in a sense. It's just the only thing is that we built this show with a lot of work and a lot of, I'll say it, pain.
Yeah.
And worry and everything else. And so we're maintaining the ownership of that, and we're maintaining the integrity of that people have grown accustomed to hearing. And obviously the reason people tune in at all. So we've got to keep some kind of measure of control on that, that we don't get somebody that comes on and we put someone on, let's say, Colin Andrews or Richard Haynes, and starts in with, well, what do you think about reptilians?
Right.
That's definitely not the way we want to go with this. So we're going to be looking for everyone's user content. We're going to be going through all of that. Ultimately, it's going to be more work in a sense, but I think in the long run, the more voices we get in this, the more people that we can bring that wouldn't normally have ever gotten to speak to Colin Andrews or any of these people at length and in depth one-on-one. Some of those people have the best questions.
Yeah, or just speak to 100,000 people, whatever it is that you want to say. Maybe there are researchers listening to this who aren't, or bloggers in the blogosphere who feel like their voices aren't being heard and you're not an experiencer or whatever. Well, now's your chance. You can promote your site, you can promote your book or whatever
Absolutely.
You're doing. Yeah. Again, and it can be up to 2 hours. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. If it's a half hour, well, I'm sure more than one person will end up doing about a half hour. So we'll just put out multiple people on an episode. Not a problem. So, like I said, we'll do a few more episodes ourselves, and then we will slowly we'll probably weave ourselves in with this user content. And then eventually it will all be the user content, and Jeff and I will come back to do specials every now and then.
Yeah, like on-location things. We do the Mark Nesbitt house again and all
that's
of
the other
that.
Thing, because this is about maintaining and building the community. And so, yeah, we're we're bringing people to Mark Nesbitt's for the ghost hunt.
Yes.
We're bringing people out to the Hudson Valley to Hawk Rock and to some of these pre-Celtic structures with Phil and Brogno. I mean, this is really an amazing opportunity for all of us to get involved and to learn and to think and to learn how to think about this stuff by being involved in it, by seeing it up close and personal, or by braving it out and throwing your ideas out there, throwing your experiences out there to the masses to critique or to just to listen to. I hope people do critique each other's performances somewhat. I mean, I don't want that to turn into a bash fest or anything like that. If that starts to happen,
no, the message board will still be moderated. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, I think we all need everyone's help in this to help each other along into new ways of thinking about this stuff. And I think this is the best way to go about it.
And I think personally that I'm sure, beyond being sure, that there are listeners out there who aren't particularly vocal on the message board, but I definitely have written me to talk about how much they like the show. I won't be at all surprised if someone comes on and does an hour or 2 hours and comes across an idea that we didn't even dream of. That's what it means to put more heads together, and that's the point in this. So we've got this great vehicle, and now we want you all to climb in the back seat and eventually take the wheel. And I think that's going to be a great thing. And I'll say this, Jer, we have to make this abundantly clear for everybody that if you're, or if you've ever been a guest on this show, you have an open door standing invite to come on, talk about your research, talk about something you've written, something you've done, something you've filmed, whatever. You all, every single guest we ever had, you all have a standing open door invitation. You need only say the word, I need your show for 2 hours, and you own it for 2 hours. That's an open standing invitation. We told Colin Andrews and we told Susan Kornacki, right, that both of them, they know what's going on. So
they were very enthusiastic about it.
So yeah.
That's
Colin,
how we know we're going in the right direction.
Very excited. So, but that goes for every guest we've ever had. If any of you want to record something and you need our help to do it, to get it up on Paratopia, you've got our help instantly. All you need to do is drop us a line at paratopiapodcast@gmail.com. Or email Jeremy and I privately and say the word, I need your show. You have our show, period. Every single guest we've ever had. So that's a wide open door. And that too could be, those could be some amazing shows. And I'll tell you what, Jeremy, if hypnosis works, here's my hypnotic plant for this episode.
Sleep.
Dealing with this crap is futile. Let's do something else. Let's do something else. Just get off the ship of fools and let's do this thing. And we'll be the new ship of fools.
That's right. We'll be the Mayflower of fools.
Right.
Exactly. But please start getting, get your audio in now, because that will save us a lot of time. If we can edit a bunch of episodes together beforehand, then we can take time off to do what we want to do.
Well, how about this? How about we suggest this to start? How about if all of you write us at paratopiapodcast@gmail.com and tell us what your show thematic will be. What do you want to talk about? And write that up for us in a really brief, a paragraph. And then we'll tell you, go with it, make it happen. And you record it, make it happen. And we're going to listen to every one before it airs, so that we're essentially, Jeremy, am I right? I'm right here. We're picking the cream of what we get to put out.
Yeah, and we will edit you to sound professional. We will edit out your ums and ahs, long pauses. And
that's what we mean by that. So don't be super critical of what you're doing. Try to keep it clean, but you don't have to worry so much about let me think about this. Stand by a minute. And as long as you, after a pause, just do this. 3, 2, 1. And then start talking again. That makes it a little easier for us to cut out dead wood. So other than that, send us your ideas, and what ones we like, we'll tell you. Go with it. Let's roll.
Yeah, and when you send the audio file, you can send pretty much anything, but really what would be helpful is a high-quality MP3.
Yeah.
The higher the better. We'll do the compressing.
And you can send that through. You send it? Or is that going to be our chosen?
Yeah, or whatever they want. I mean, you send it.
Whatever big file sender you want to use, yeah.
Obviously, I don't think Gmail or any of those accept anything over 20 megabytes. So
Right.
So there you go.
And also, I mean, did we mention that if they wanted to, just say we had a brother and a sister who have had experiences and they want to interview each other? I mean, you guys can do stuff like that.
Interview each other and interview others on the on the message board. I mean, say you hear somebody who interests you in one of these podcasts, and you want to interview them or have them interview you. I mean, set all that stuff up. Go do you. Just make it spectacular.
Well, and we should say that if they need help recording or anything like that, I don't do the recording. Jeremy does, but I'm sure that he wouldn't have any problem signing on and putting somebody on a party line and then going to do his thing while the recorder runs. And hey, I'll be back in a half an hour.
Yeah,
check on you guys, and he can go on and do something he wants to do. And you guys can just basically use the system to record your thing. And so we'll help people. We'll help this happen. So, but I think most of the people who listen know how to record their own voice on their computer, and that's what we want to start with. So start thinking about it. Start planning out what you would want to do. You've got the platform. We're giving it to you. So get ready for number 70, because that's when we're going to start phasing out. We're going to be doing, like Jeremy said, specials and whatnot throughout the year. Sometimes they may be frequent and sometimes they might not. But either way, when we put one together, it's probably going to be, am I right, Jer, we're going to try to do maybe a marathon type of thing where it's 3 hours plus maybe on some of these things. More in depth. If we're on a location, it's going to be more in depth than, say, what we put together for Mark Nesbitt's thing, which was damn near 3 hours, but you're going to hear a lot more findings. You're going to hear a lot more of interviews and all of that contained within a really huge special. So those will still be happening. And we're still going to be having people out to, you mentioned Phil and Brogno's thing, and you mentioned Mark Nesbitt's thing, both of which are coming up, where we're going to be soliciting for people to get on board and go with us. But I wouldn't mind doing a remote from the house if one of our listeners wants to spend a night in your room and hang around here for a day or so. I don't have a problem with that.
If anyone wants to get together to protest the Steve Bassett contactee abductee conference coming up in, I think, October.
Oh my God!
We can go set up a protest for that.
Yeah, I'll paint the signs, but I'm staying home on that one. So, it's as wide as you guys want to make it, and we'll keep the quality of things good, and we'll still be bringing you really great content. So we just won't be doing it. I mean, like we said, we feel like it's time for you guys now to take this and go with it, and we're going to guide it and we're going to steer it. I think it could move mountains with that, because two voices are great. But if we get
100,000 voices,
100,000 different people talking about this in meaningful ways on this show to all of these people, I mean, damn. I mean, that could do something. If you don't want to be a part of this lunacy anymore, then, you basically batten down the hatches, you climb in the bunker, and you either wait it out or you start talking amongst yourselves in the foxholes, and that's what we're planning to do. So
the vacation's over, Paratopia.
Right,
it's time to get to work.
That's right. Yeah, let's do it. I mean, we got the whole island now, so we're gonna build a pier and everybody drive their boat up. I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be great. I really do. I'm super happy that we decided not to just fold it up. I think that'd have been a real waste, So there it is, folks.
Onward and upward.
Yeah. Good luck to all of you.
Yes. Yeah, good luck to all of you.
From here on out, until we reach 70, we're going to try to pack in as much good stuff as we can, and we're trying to get some of our old guests back to kind of send us off on this new direction. So let's see what happens.
All right. And now enjoy the musical stylings of Vaeni.
Oh, good Lord.
Strength.